They say ignorance is bliss, but as a lifelong journalist, I really couldn't disagree more. If there's something shocking to know, I want to know about it, and I want you to know about it too. I'm Peggy Bunker, and I can't wait for you to know it all. This season's focus, do we even know what we're eating? The truth about factory farming. Welcome back to Know It All. I'm Peggy Bunker. You know, when you're in the store and you're looking at a package, it all seems to tell a story. If you're getting some eggs or butter or cheese, it'll probably have pictures of happy cows in a green pasture eating fresh grass. Lots of places to move around. Same with chickens. You'll see full-feathered chickens strutting around in a big open barnyard area. But is that actually the truth? Sometimes that packaging is telling you a story so you feel good, like you're making a good ethical choice when you purchase that for your family. But Kim Sturla is not buying it. As executive director of the amazing Animal Place, she really has seen it all. So much of Kim's work involves fighting for necessary legislative changes, but she personally believes that the best way to advocate for animals is to get rid of animal products from your diet entirely. Not everybody has the same perspective, but this is hers, and it's such an interesting one to hear. It's always amazing to talk to Kim, and I'm super excited about it. It doesn't look as good as my current podcast setup. This is before I got my act together, so bear with me there. But no matter what, it's really important to hear what Kim has to say. When we talked many years ago, it was before there was some Proposition 12 was put in place in California, granting three different free-farmed animals more space. As you know, the industry now, in terms of a rescue organization, how have we improved, or has it improved at all?
Well, as you know, so that Proposition 12, that passed in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and it affords protection to hen used for breeding purposes, pigs used for breeding purposes, and calves that are raised for the veal industry. But they phased in the effort or they phased in the legality of Proposition 12 of when it would go into effect. So it's just starting to. Now, we have seen chickens raised for egg production that many of the farms that we have worked with over the years, well, they began implementing Proposition 12 a couple of years ago. So many of the larger farms have phased out the small battery cages where there's like 10 birds per cage. However, many of them just opened up the slats in between the cages, had the same number of birds in there, but then they could walk up and down. So has it impacted the space that birds have had? On many farms, not. And on some farms, yes.
And what do you think people don't realize about the conditions of these places? You have actually been inside. Can you describe what it's like to walk inside what these animals go through when they're living in these type of sheds?
I wish I could take everybody inside those farms. And yes, I've been inside dozens of them over the years. And it begins with the odor. So as you're driving to the site, you smell it before you see it at all. And we usually will rescue the birds at nighttime because they're calmer. And so we're, making our way legally. We're able to go in and take out birds that are referred to as the spinned hens, those that they would be slaughtering because their egg production has begun to decrease. So it is the odor first. And then when you walk in and turn on the lights, the sound of screaming birds as you're walking up and down the aisles is utterly deafening. And we have so many birds at Animal Place, and so it's not a sound that I have ever been familiar with before going into those farms. So the utter fear that they're experiencing. But then visually, they're on cages that are a number of feet off the ground, and literally these whole sheds have just, 3 feet, 4 feet high of feces that has accumulated for in some cases years. And it is a sight that I cannot adequately explain. It is one of those, it's an experience that is like no other. It is an experience that you never forget. So these are birds that have lived their entire lives inside a cage indoors. So their feet have only touched the ground. I mean, not the ground, excuse me, the cage bottom. They have not had the benefit of sunshine or nest boxes or perching, nothing. That's just nothing. It's the most barren existence. And that is what I've experienced on the farms that I've gone into. I've gone into free range farms. Is it a little bit better? Yeah, just a little bit better.
If you were to say to someone, I mean, and I feel the similar frustration, how do you think we got to this point? How is it even legal and allowed to treat animals like that? I understand too that they go in as chicks, they all get dumped in as chicks, and then for how long are they in those cages? Because I remember saying to Jennifer Fearing, well, at least it's not as bad as some of the other animals. And she's like, oh no, there's no animal with more distress than the egg-laying hen, because they're there for the sheer duration of time that they're having to exist in that environment is more than, say, like a pig, which is killed, I don't know, or somewhat quicker. I understand it's two years. Is that right?
Yeah, but I would just make one correction. The pigs raised as breeders have it a horrendous, absolutely horrendous situation. And how did we get there? I don't know. There is this disregard for life. The chickens were really the first species to begin to be quote unquote factory farmed, and it's been for money. So it really is just for money that has built this industry. There's just no regard. You can't treat any being like that and say you have any regard for their well-being. And it is, I'm always baffled. I always ask my question. I never have an answer. How do we possibly justify treating others like that? We know these are sentient animals. We know they have feelings and emotions. Very complex social structure with chickens, and I think many folks don't realize. And yet, we're treating them in such disregard. And it begins in the hatchery. We have breeder chickens that are raised in cages exclusively for their eggs. Those eggs are shipped into hatcheries, and then all the chicks are hatched at the same time. And let's not forget that the male chicks that cannot lay eggs, obviously, and that are not of the breed that are the quality to slaughter them for their flesh, so they're ground up alive. That is the common method in California, and I think pretty much throughout the United States. So it's like these large blenders, masticating machines where you just throw these live bodies in when they're, a day or two old. And then the little chicks on most farms, and they're debeaked. So there is this process they go through, which is just embedded with cruelty, cruelty, cruelty. And then they're thrown in cages where they're out producing a tremendous high quantity of eggs. I mean, a heritage breed would lay a dozen eggs a year. And these birds are bred to lay, a few hundred a year. So it taxes their whole reproductive system greatly.
It's just so it's so horrific. And how do you, being so ensconced in this type of business and knowing what you know, I'm sort of on the I'm very interested in it, but I'm not in it like you are, and it even keeps me up at night. So how do you, knowing what you know, do you want to rattle cages and get more people to pay attention? How do we get people to wake up to using the power of the dollar to only support products that have, humane origins? Is that even a possibility, or do you just feel defeated sometimes?
I can't allow myself to feel defeated, because that's not going to be bringing about change. I think the changes that Proposition 12 is making are wonderful, and it's certainly helping the animals. However, that said, I don't encourage people to buy eggs from free-range farms or organic farms. I encourage them to eliminate eggs from their diet, or at the very least begin reducing the number of eggs they eat. I think that is where real change will come about, because you can't make the raising and slaughtering of animals, quote unquote, humane. You're taking their life. And these beings want to live as much as you and I do, as much as your dog, as much as your cat. And real change is going to be when we're able to expand that compassion we have for some to broaden that circle of compassion. So we give all beings equal consideration. And gosh, I mean, it's so easy to be a vegan nowadays. Back in the days we didn't have all these products, but on every soy milk and nut milks and cheeses and ice cream and faux meats, it's not difficult. There are so many products that you can go to any grocery store and find a whole array of how you can eat in a very healthier way, and as well as a more compassionate way for the planet and for the animals.
And if people knew, especially like say moms, like I try to talk a lot to moms because I feel like, we have the power of the purse. We're the ones shopping for our kids. Also, we're trying to make more humane decisions for the most part. If you could finish the sentence, if they knew what I know, or if they knew what it looked like, what would you say to moms when they're making those choices in the grocery store of where they're going to spend their money?
When I'm giving tours of the sanctuary and I'm bringing families through and introducing them to the different animals there, I like to ask them if they have dogs and cats at home. Do they have companion animals? Are they sharing their home, their beds, like many of us, with their animals? And what would you think if you took your dog to a veterinarian to have him neutered, and the veterinarian just strapped his legs on the table, no analgesics, no anesthesia, no nothing, and just castrated him right there as your dog is screaming in pain? What would you think? How would you feel? And everybody gets it right away. Well, my animal would be feeling pain. It would be terrible. I would be bringing cruelty charges against this veterinarian. And yet we do that to mammals all the time. Or if they have birds, how would they feel about putting them in cages so jammed where they cannot even spread their wings, that they can't do natural behaviors of even sitting on a perch? So trying to get them to challenge their thinking of switching out that chicken for a companion bird, switching out the pig in a gestation crate who can't not even turn around when she's pregnant, with a dog or a cat. And then you kind of see the light bulb above their head. I think we're so used to seeing animals raised for food production as just as these beings that are there for us to use and raise however we want to and eat, that you need to kind of just challenge that the way we've been enculturated to view these animals as something very different. They all have personalities. They all have their likes and their dislikes. They all have their friends. Some are very introverted. Some are loners. Some are very social. I don't care which species we have at the sanctuary. Turkeys, chickens, pigs, goats, cows. They're all different. They're individuals. And it's just no way to treat a sentient being.
I couldn't agree with you more. What do you feel like is most effective, especially, with trying to reach people on social media, younger generations, people who are completely oblivious about the production of food? Because legislatively, that's how most factory farms have made it be. It's a hidden process. People don't see it. They don't understand where their food comes from. It's very sanitized by the time it gets to them. And the horror of where it came from is by law hidden. What would you say to somebody who wants to do the right thing, can't imagine not eating meat? They love their burger, they love their omelet, what have you. Do you have anything that you say to those people who don't want to be part of that process, but they also don't want to give up their burger? What do you say?
Yeah, and I think that's a large number of people. I have the benefit because I work at the sanctuary, so I've got the backdrop of the animals as they're the real teachers when I'm giving tours. However, one of the great benefits of any legislative effort, and certainly Proposition 12, and before that Proposition 2, is it gives us an educational platform. So we have a wonderful educational platform to put that issue out to the public. So as we're out there collecting signatures and engaging with people, then we can really have on a one-on-one dialogue. It has been very helpful, not only in offering some protection for farmed animals, but in educating the public about how they're raised and they're treated. And as we know, Californians have overwhelmingly wanted to support legislation where animals are treated a little bit better. Also, legislation is incremental. And so, whether it's the next decade and the decade after, we want to keep returning and trying to make California even more compassionate of a state than we already are. So how do I reach those people? I think you meet them wherever they are. If they're absolutely refuse to give up meat, you're introducing them to pigs. You let them come nose to snout with, let's say with Wilma, one of our pigs, and they're still adamant about eating animals. And I would go to the next step. I would talk to about their health, because gosh knows there's a ton of data out there now. It's easy to find of how you are healthier if you take animal products out of your diet. They're still adamant, then ask them at the very least to consider reducing the number of animals that they're eating. So I think are ways every single person can go on that path of living more sustainably, concerned about their health, and concerned about the animals that they're consuming.
Some people say you can raise meat humanely, like Nyman Ranch, set up this, but then I know they actually parted ways because they didn't think that it was a humane process. What would you say to the humane slaughter of animals, or people who are trying to do it the right way? Do you think that that is possible?
No, it can't. How can it be done humanely when you're taking a life? You're purposely breeding these animals to kill them. So can that be done humanely? No. Can it be done in a less painful way where there's less suffering? Sure. But no, there's nothing humane about raising another being just to slaughter.
Very well said. Very well put. How long have you been a vegan, and what was it that made you become a vegan?
I have been a vegan, I have to figure this out, probably 40 years. And I became a vegetarian first. I read Peter Singer's book in 1975, right when it came off the shelf. I devoured that book. But I wasn't a vegan. And it was through educating myself, and it was hard back then. It's just pre-internet, and there were very few books, and there were no films. So it was a slow process. I would say probably maybe 10 years later, I became a vegan. And the hardest part for me was cheese. And back then there wasn't any, we didn't have any of those alternative products. We had powdered milk you could order. You couldn't even order it online because you couldn't order online. You had to send away for these, paper pamphlets and then, check which boxes you wanted and send in a check. God awful stuff too. But, yeah, it's been many, many decades.
Do you have one particular animal? I know you see the range because you have all animals that you rescue there. So do you have one that you think is the most distressing? I know the beak issue for the hens, I think, is incredibly distressing. The gestation crates for pigs, but is there one that you would say like really stands out as the most distressing treatment of factory farm animals?
We've rescued a number of animals that have been from local cruelty cases, so not a result of factory farming, that have been horrific. If I talk about those that, well, we've rescued a number of birds from feed stores that were selling them. They order them, through the mail, and then they sell them to people. And we had to call a welfare check out on our local feed store because they were dead and dying birds there. And luckily they impounded them all and we took them in. I have a very strong affinity with pigs. So how they're treated it's beyond how I can't even fathom and hard to even talk about. And if you talk numbers, so I think there's a degree of suffering, which would be pigs raised as breeders, and chickens raised for their eggs. And if you look at the numbers, then it's hands down chickens raised for their eggs. And it doesn't hit me when I go into those farms. I'm so focused on getting as many birds out as I can that and getting them out gently and then moving on and then getting them back to the sanctuary. It doesn't hit you until we let them out of their transport cages. And then it's just it's heart-wrenching and yet heartwarming, because these are birds that have never been out of the friggin' cage. And they're petrified when they get to the sanctuary. But they're touching the earth. They've never done that. And there's always invariably will be a few out of, hundreds that'll just immediately begin dust bathing. And they're on their side and they're scratching the dirt and they're covering all over. And then they're stretching their wings out and sunbathing. And then the other birds will kind of go around and they're watching them. And then they will join in with them. And to see that process of feeling freedom it's no better than that. And they go through then a 2-week rehabilitation process. I mean, these birds, all their muscles are atrophied. Most don't have the strength to jump on top of a bale of straw. Certainly they can't perch. They've never perched in their lives. So these are all behaviors that not only do they have to learn, they've got to get the strength to do it. And it really is when we're letting them out to experience freedom, then it really hits me. Or maybe that's just kind of when I will allow it to hit me, because I can't do it when we're on the farm. You got to keep your wits about you so that you can help.
How tough is it that you can't save all of them because you're just going in? How many, if you could just say, the farmer calls and says, okay, we're going to do that, because they gas them. Don't they gas the entire shed? Isn't that what they do when they take them out?
It depends on the breed. On the white leghorns that we primarily rescue, yeah, they gas them on site. If it's the red or brown girls, they're larger, then they're caught and they're transported and, hung upside down and slaughtered. So it depends on the breed.
So you walk into tell us about what it's like. You walk into a shed with how many thousands of birds, and how many do you rescue, and how often do you do it?
Well, we started this program probably about 10 years ago, and we've saved, 28,000 lives. We always like to bring in our residential interns to join us, as well as obviously the staff and volunteers, because it is an eye-opening experience. People are just that much better advocates when they see firsthand what goes on in farms. It's not hearsay. It's not a video. You saw it. You smelled it. You touched them. You can speak firsthand with authority of what you saw. And when we go in, we will rescue up to 2,000 birds. Usually it's more like 1,000. Some staff and volunteers will go once, but they can't go again. It's just too heart-wrenching for them, and I understand that. For me, it feeds my soul. For me, there is nothing better to save that many lives.
Someone felt so.
I am so glad that you do that. And I'm so glad that Animal Place exists and that there's a place for these animals to go after the degree of suffering that they have endured. And I know I speak for so many people when I say thank you for the work that you do, because more people should do it. I wish more people knew. I think if more people saw the inside of these sheds where hundreds of thousands of birds. I remember the interview I did in Petaluma. He was getting a bigger shed that was like 400,000 birds or something, or two side by side. It was a 200,000 bird. It was a mind-boggling number of animals. And automated care. I was like, well, who cares for them? And it doesn't sound like anybody does. It's automated water, automated feed. And there's like when they go in, and then 2 years later when they're all killed and come out. So I cannot fathom how that's a legal thing to do. And I just think if people knew better, they would spend their money better. And if we could start supporting a different type of industry, then that's the goal. So is there anything else you would say to, anybody? What's the message that you would like to get out? Come visit the Animal Place. Think about your food sources. What do you like to share with people as some final thoughts?
It's both. It's Animal Places in Grass Valley and the Sierra Foothills. Come by for a tour. We would welcome all our guests, as well as there's a number of sanctuaries all around the United States. So if Animal Place is too far from me, my goodness, there's so many. There's Herd and Block in Vacaville. There's Harvest Home in Stockton. There's Farm Sanctuary in Southern California. I could just go on and on. So we have a website, sanctuaries.org. Go to the website and see where the sanctuaries are. And then by all means, do your health a favor and do the environment a favor and certainly the animals a favor and consider eating more plant-based. A lot of good foods out there that are healthy and delicious, and you might even taste like meat to you. And so if you're really craving that hamburger, you're going to find maybe something just as good with Beyond Meat, burger or Impossible Burger. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kim. It's so nice to talk to you.
I can't talk about feeding animals without getting emotional. I've tried over the years, Peggy, and I can't do it.
I think it's fabulous, and it's what gets people to pay attention. I mean, I think it's fantastic, and I love having that emotion, and I feel the same way. And I think more people. That's why people don't pay attention to it. It's so painful. It is a very painful topic, and I'm very happy that you're able to do the work that you can. So thank you for your time, Kim, for your work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peggy.
If you liked what you heard, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review. Know It All is a production of Peggy Bunker Media. Editing, producing, and recording is done by the team at Resonate Recordings. I'm Peggy Bunker, and now you know it all.